Chess, nonsense, and analysis. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to briefly talk about this game I found interesting technically from the recently concluded South African Junior Championship. Before we start here in this game, yeah, I'd just like to mention a few players that I thought had outstanding results. We had in the under 20 girls section. Elsie Jacobs, who managed to score 8 out of 9. Then we had in the under 18 girls, Shakira Amrowini, 8.5, an amazing score. In the under 14, we had Inkita Joya with 8. Under 16 girls section, we had Frishta Sophia, 8.5. Wow. And then in the boys under 20, we had Charlton Mnyasta, whose game I'm going to show now, scoring 8.5 out of 9. Impressive. And also Felix Rafael in the under 16 section. So well done to them and all the other players, of course. Let's jump into this game. This game was played in round 7 between Charlton Mnyasta against Waylon Branda. And it was a Sicilian. Bishop d3, okay. Knight c6. And this position was reached. Queen e2, castles b3, a5, bishop b2, knight d7. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of knight d7. I think that if black has already started with a5, it makes sense to just continue with a4 because you want to trade your weak pawn. And in some variations, you might consider playing a3, but generally you will trade. And yeah, why not, right? Okay, knight d7, white takes on d5. This is fully playable, but again, I'm not a fan because I always like to not make life easy for my opponents. I feel that, the opponent c6 could be a problem for black. So maybe if I had white, I would have chosen. I'm not saying it's better, but it's what I would have played. I would have rather played c4. Leave the c pawn for a while. I want to play rook c1 and put maybe the bishop back to b1 and but it's neither here nor there. But okay, taking on d5 is a move, of course. Takes back c4, bishop f6, rook d1, queen b6, h3. Not sure if this move is necessary. Maybe white should play rook c1. Because if ideally for white, if I can play rook c1, because the black squares are weak, right, for black, and maybe squeeze in some c5 and play knight f3, I could then play or hope for more, right? Like rook c1, push pawn to c5, play knight f3. It won't be easy, but that would be sort of an idea. Then I can always support c5 with a3, b4. Maybe that's a plan that could have been played, but okay, h3, maybe a waiting move. And maybe Charlton feels that it's useful because maybe the king has luft later on. Bishop a6, rook c1, very logical moves. Rook c8, takes on d5, bishop takes. And here I find I'm puzzled by e takes d5 because I think black should just take with the knight here. And the position is equal. If knight c4, possibly queen b4. And there isn't much that white has here. The game should end in a draw. But after e takes d5, white it's very close to equality, but white has got something because the pawn on d5 is isolated. Now, Charlton played knight f3 here, thinking maybe knight f1 may be an idea to put black under pressure and put the knight on e3, and attack d5. And should the pawn ever move, then we have this beautiful square for the knight, and then we play around the pawn, rook e1, and so on, yeah. Knight f1 was an interesting try. knight f3, h6, 24. Yeah, look, for me, this is a very interesting position. The question is, how does white make progress? And I think the pawn structure here maybe favors the more active player. So if my dream is to put my knight on f5, right? If I could find a way to put my knight on f5, uh, then the king side can be very weak, queen g3, rook e1, or things like this. It's not easy to set up, of course, because if I play knight d4, I guess black plays knight d4, and black, is having the argument that if I move, f2 is under pressure. But maybe I can play something like queen e3, can't I? Maybe, and put my knight on f5. Well, my idea, put my knight on f5 and press on d5. And if my opponent takes here, I may consider taking back with the pawn. I may consider, but also take with the knight. And if I hold a small little advantage, but that I can press, So I found it very interesting on those parts, technically. But okay, after queen d4 was played, round about here, the game fizzles out into a draw, and nothing really much to be done. There's too little in the position. So yeah, a highly interesting game, but I think both players can have a look at the middle game. It's very rich, and it attracted my attention because there's a lot of maneuvering that can happen there. But anyway, nice game. Well done, Charlton. Very nice result, 8.5 out of 9. And by the way, I checked in the under 20 section, what is very interesting. I think the first 4 places are players from Western Province. It's quite a big statement because it's possibly the strongest section in terms of players that are there field wise. Anyway, yeah, we look at the next event, but yeah, we'll be keeping a close eye to all these juniors when they venture out, go to the African Juniors, World Youth later on, and so on. Good luck to them. And yeah, very interesting. So yeah, that was all I had for today. And with that, I will say till we meet next time, checkmate.